Let me take a very theoretical example. Let's assume in the past a car was produced in one country and exported in another country for 100. Let's assume now this car is produced in 5 different countries, bits of engines, bits of doors, bits of windscreens, bits of tires. Let's assume, again, to remain simple, that it's a 5-stage sequence, each stage producing 20% of the end value of the car. You produce a car which is 100. You had in the past 100 of trade. Now you have 20 for the first stage, plus 40 for the second stage, plus 60 for the third stage, plus 80. And each time you move to a country, you increase the volume of trade. So for the same car, which is still worth 100, you have 300 of trade in volume, which makes absolutely no sense in terms of measuring trade in volumes, and especially relating trade in volumes to GNPs. GNP is a sum of value addition. What the logical conclusion of that is that we need to measure trade in value addition and not in volumes. It's a huge change for statisticians. It's a revolution, but it's a revolution that economic science need to do in order for politicians and policymakers in trade to get the right picture. If you measure trade in volume, the US trade deficit with China is, let's say, 100. If you measure it in value, the US trade deficit with China shrinks by half. Now, why is it so? Simply because a lot of what China exports to the US has a lot of US value-added content. Take a mobile phone, which is assembled in Chengdu in the Foxconn factory, which is exported for the US for, let's say, again, 100. You have 35 US value addition in this mobile phone, and you have 5 Chinese value addition. So the US value addition in an export of 100 from China to the US is 7 times higher than the Chinese value addition. So I'll finish on this example just to show that this is one recent, simple case where science, I know many people will debate whether economic science is a science, but this is a case where we need serious economic science in order for people like 2 examples. And now Vice President Katainen will conclude this morning. Thanks for your attention.
Thank you, Pascal Lamy. And you know me too well to know that far away from me the thought of using you as bouche-trou, but actually keeping up with the timing on the schedule. Vice President Katainen, you will forgive us for giving the floor to a former commissioner. Yeah, please, come to the floor. Now, we're turning to you. You heard it. He was very explicit. We need to involve the citizens much more. The previous panel said it's either deep change or slow death. So the floor is yours under the question. Please.
Thank you very much. Very nice to be here today, Honourable MEP, former Commissioner, Pascal, ladies and gentlemen. It's nice to have a chance to participate in this kind of event because I think we need platforms and forums like this in order to address wicked problems. Wicked problems are something different than normal problems. Even they are more challenging to address than enormous problems. Because wicked problem is usually something which is, at least in the beginning, very difficult to recognize. Second, there is no perfect solution. And this is probably the biggest challenge, at least for the politicians. You should be strong enough to do imperfect solutions. Also, it's a big challenge for media, how to accept politicians making solutions which are not perfect. But if you try to address wicked problems, then you must acknowledge that there is not a perfect solution, which would be only positive. But if you are not courageous enough to do this kind of solutions, then the wicked problem takes you over. JRC is our crown jewel, and it's. I really want to thank you for organizing again this annual seminar, which is bringing us all together. It is clear that political and societal challenges we are facing can no longer be solved by commissioners and ministers operating in silos. Every policy has causes and consequences that across countries and scientific disciplines. On top of that, relationship between knowledge and action between science and politics is extremely complicated. The simplistic model of scientists laying out the facts and politicians perfectly weighing the scientific pros and cons to make a decision is not really working. Some say that if only politicians paid more attention to the facts and to scientists, government would improve. This does not seem to be the case. The events of the last months have made it abundantly clear that the pure technocratic policy making will simply not pass the democratic test. We cannot hope to address the challenges we face without embracing new knowledge, new tools such as big data, emerging technologies, and yes, more expertise. But the popular appetite for such a technocracy is headed firmly in the opposite direction. As the body proposing European legislation, the European Commission has always based itself on a thorough analysis of facts. This Commission in particular has made a serious attempt to address the complexity of the issues and to break the silos. In the complex and interdependent world we face, we desperately need organizations like JRC that can cross both scientific and policy boundaries. The JRC is a unique organization because of the breadth of both its scientific competence and its policy advice. I welcome the work of Commissioner Tibor Navracsics and his team in reorganizing the JRC and strengthening its role as a science and knowledge service of the European Commission, which can deliver the facts when and where most needed, and also in language which is understandable to non-scientists. Commissioner Carlos Moedas has made a real effort to deliver responsible research and innovation by ensuring that scientists engage more with citizens, explaining their work and addressing their concerns, and for policymakers to build a new level of trust in scientific institutions and scientific method that we use for underpinning policy decisions. By the same token, I welcome the establishment of the Scientific Advice Mechanism, SAM, to provide independent scientific advice to the Commission. This Commission has invested considerable effort to strengthen the role played by evidence in its policymaking, notably through the better regulation agenda. The Commission's impact assessment process has been recognized by the OECD as among the world's best. And we still aim at further improving, for example, through our sustained effort to robustly quantify the impacts of our policies. We have the Regulatory Scrutiny Board, who are working to support our agenda and to further improve the quality of our evaluation and impact assessment. The Regulatory Scrutiny Board has among its ranks independent members in order to hold the Commission to account and make sure evidence is properly weighted and considered. We have also strengthened considerably the consultation of citizens and stakeholders, and build more systematically on the findings of ex-post evaluations to design our future policies. And since better regulation is a shared responsibility, we are also stepping up to monitoring and implementation of our interinstitutional agreement on better lawmaking, working jointly with Parliament and the Council. We hope that politicians take decisions using the available evidence on what the problem is, what the alternative policy options are, and what their impact may be. In order to reach this goal, better regulation processes aim to ensure the best available evidence and analysis is made available to decision-making in a timely fashion. All of these efforts have made our policy-making process more robust, transparent, and inclusive. One of the most important lessons we have learned here is that investments in science and data very often have positive spillover effects across the sectors. Let me give you some examples. First, Copernicus, the European Union Programme for Satellite Earth Observation, is making an important contribution to the enhanced transparency framework for national greenhouse gas emission reporting and observation-based verification agreed in Paris, COP21. The Copernicus Emergency Management Service also produces post-disaster analysis maps based on satellite and airborne imagery in RAS mode, and map products for disaster risk assessment, preparedness and mitigation in non-RAS emergency context. NetBravo is a JRC mobile app for smartphones and tablets to help measure the quality of mobile and broadband connections as experienced by users all around Europe. NetBravo contributes data to the European broadband priority locations for future investment in order to improve broadband infrastructure and achieve the Europe 2020 goal of universal access to high-speed broadband. As an example of citizen science, NetBravo uses the innovative approach of crowdsourcing to collect the quality of experience data directly from the users. Third example, the radio spectrum inventory allows the Commission and Member States to interactively visualize how spectrum is allocated and used across the EU. This helps towards the harmonization of spectrum use in the EU and to increase the capacity for 4G mobile broadband and next generation 5G systems. Harmonized spectrum ensures that EU's consumers can benefit from standard handset and services in all countries, reducing costs in a European single market for digital services. The crop yield forecasting activities of JRC provide harmonized European figures on expected crop production levels across all member states. These estimates in turn affect EU policies related to trade, and since they are shared in a global agricultural market information system, they can contribute to improved global availability of food. The work of JRC scientists has also contributed to the adoption of non-animal tests of cosmetics, the smoking ban inside enclosed public spaces, and a launch of the Commission initiative to limit the intake of industrial trans fatty acids in the EU, for which impact assessment will be finalized this year. And last but not least, the JRC EU wine database ensures the quality and reputation of European wine. I have tried to outline what the European Commission has been doing to improve its policy making, both in terms of the process, in other terms, breaking silos and dealing with complexity, engaging stakeholders, and the supply and use of the best possible data. While we have been looking at and improving our internal ways of functioning, we have also been looking at how others engage in this request, in this quest for evidence-based policymaking. Both within the EU and internationally, there are many different models and structures for scientific advice to national governments and international bodies. What is becoming more and more clear, whichever system is used, is that in the challenging post-fact world, where the relationship between science and politics is ever more complicated, we need to look for better ways to bring all the across in the policymaking process together to make procedure more engaging. Politicians, policymakers, scientists and citizens should be able to challenge and persuade each other more effectively. This would not only improve the quality of legislation, but also help build